Alira didn't know the stranger who'd been asking questions in the village was the Alpha King. She didn't know he'd already decided she would either become his salvation or die with his secrets buried in her chest. And she definitely didn't know that the sound of boots stopping outside her door would shatter the fragile life she'd spent 7 years building from nothing. All she knew was that the widow Marin's fever had finally broken, that her hand still smelled of yarrow and boneset, and that, if she didn't get back to her cottage before the midnight bell, Elder Osric would add another month to her contract. The village of Thornwick was quiet at this hour, frost creeping along the cobblestones, chimneys breathing thin ribbons of smoke into the black sky. Alira walked quickly, her worn boots silent from years of practice. She'd learned to move without sound, without notice. Invisible girls survived longer. Her cottage sat at the edge of the village where the cobblestones gave way to dirt, and the dirt gave way to the witchwood forest. It was small, barely more than a single room with a sleeping loft, but it was hers in all the ways that mattered. She knew every crack in the walls, every draft that slipped through the shutters, every herb hanging from the rafters. She was reaching for the door handle when she heard it. Footsteps. Heavy. Deliberate. The kind that belonged to a man who had never learned to make himself small. Alira's hand froze. She pressed herself against the doorframe, heart slamming against her ribs. The footsteps grew closer, louder, until they stopped directly behind her. She could feel him there, the heat of a body too close, the weight of attention fixed on her back like a blade waiting to fall. "You're the healer." His voice was low, rough-edged, carrying the kind of authority that expected answers rather than asked for them. "The village has many healers." Alira kept her voice steady, though her pulse screamed. "Elder Osric can direct you to whichever one suits your needs. I'm not looking for just any healer." The stranger stepped closer, close enough that she could smell pine and leather and something darker beneath. Smoke, maybe. Or blood. "I'm looking for you, Alira. The one they call the Whisper Witch." Her blood turned to ice. No one had called her that in 7 years, not since her mother had burned for it. Alira turned slowly, forcing herself to meet his gaze. And the moment she saw his face, those pale gray eyes holding the cold of northern winters, the silver circlet half hidden beneath dark hair, a single thought crystallized in her mind with horrifying clarity. Please, not the Alpha King. Anyone else she could run from. Anyone else she could lie to. But the Alpha King found what he hunted. Always. And tonight, he was hunting her. He was nothing like the stories described. The tales spoke of a beast in human skin, a king who had slaughtered his way to the throne and ruled through terror alone. They said his eyes glowed red when he was angry, that he could smell fear from a mile away, and that he had once torn out a traitor's throat with his bare teeth in front of the entire court. But the man standing before Alira didn't look like a monster. He looked exhausted, the kind of exhaustion that lived in the bones that no amount of sleep could touch. His face was all sharp angles and shadows, beautiful in the way a drawn blade was beautiful, deadly and precise. Dark hair fell past his collar, unkempt, as if grooming had become an afterthought. And those gray eyes, the ones that should have been cold, held something she hadn't expected. Desperation. "May I come in?" he asked. Alira almost laughed. The Alpha King asking permission to enter a peasant's cottage. "Do I have a choice?" "You always have a choice." The words landed strangely like a stone dropped into still water. She studied him for a long moment, weighing her options. Running was pointless. Lying was dangerous. Which left only the truth, or some careful version of it. She opened the door and stepped inside. He followed, ducking slightly beneath the low frame, and suddenly her cottage felt impossibly small. He filled the space not just with his size, but with his presence, that suffocating awareness that made the air feel thicker. Alira lit a candle with trembling fingers. The Whisper Witch is a ghost story, something mothers tell children to make them behave. And yet here you are. He didn't sit, just stood in the center of the room, watching her with those ancient, tired eyes. Hiding at the edge of nowhere, bound to a village elder who treats you like property, using half your gift to heal fevers while burying the rest so deep you've almost forgotten it exists. Her chest tightened. You don't know anything about me. I know your mother was Maven of the Grey Hills, a blood singer, one of the last. His voice softened just slightly. I know she burned when you were 15 because someone saw her track a missing child through a single drop of blood, and I know she made a bargain before she died. Alira's vision blurred. She blinked hard, refusing to let the tears fall. What bargain? She sent word to my father, told him about you, about your gift, asked him to protect you if you ever needed it. He paused, and something like guilt flickered across his face. My father died before he could honor that promise. The message was buried in his papers for years. I only found it 3 months ago. So you came to clear a debt? Alira's voice came out brittle. Congratulations. Consider it cleared. You can leave now. I didn't come to clear a debt. He took a step toward her, then stopped, as if forcing himself to maintain distance. I came because I need a blood singer, and you're the only one left alive. The candle flame guttered between them. Please. The words seemed to cost him something vital. I need to find my brother, and I'm running out of time. His brother. Alira had heard whispers, of course. Everyone had. The Alpha King's younger brother, Prince Tavrin, had vanished 2 months ago during a peace summit with the Eastern clans. Some said he'd been killed. Others claimed he'd been taken hostage. A few whispered that he'd betrayed his own blood and defected. But looking at the anguish barely contained behind Kaelin's iron expression, Alira knew the truth was far worse than any rumor. Tavrin was taken during the summit, Kaelin said, his voice flat, controlled, reciting facts like a soldier giving a report. We were betrayed by someone in my inner circle. Someone who knew exactly where he'd be, exactly when our guard would be down. His jaw tightened. They drugged him and dragged him out through a servant's passage. By the time we realized he was gone, they'd vanished into the Ashwood. The Ashwood spans 3 territories, Alira said slowly. He could be anywhere. He could be. But I don't think he is. Kaelin reached into his coat and withdrew a small vial, dark glass glinting in the candlelight. Inside, something thick and red caught the flame. This was left on my pillow 1 week after he disappeared. A message. Blood. Tavrin's blood. Alira's stomach turned. They're taunting you. They're torturing him. The words cracked just slightly before Kaelin locked them down again. Every week, a new vial. Every week, a little more. They want me to know he's alive. They want me to know he's suffering. And they want me desperate enough to make mistakes. What do they want in return? They haven't said. That's what terrifies me. He looked at her then, and the mask slipped completely, just for a heartbeat, revealing a man drowning in fear and fury. Tavrin knows things, Alira. Battle plans, alliance secrets, the locations of every safe house and hidden passage in the kingdom. If they break him, they could destroy everything. Yes. He held out the vial. I've had trackers, bloodhounds and seers. None of them could find him. The trail is too cold, too scattered, too protected by whoever took him. But a blood singer can track anyone through a single drop, Alira finished. No matter how far. No matter how hidden. Can you do it? She stared at the vial. The blood inside seemed to pulse, whispering to that dark gift coiled at the base of her spine. The gift her mother had died for. The gift she'd sworn never to use again. If I'm discovered, I'll burn. Just like she did. You won't be discovered. Kaelin's voice hardened into a vow. I'll make sure of it. You can't promise that. I can. Because anyone who tries to harm you will answer to me personally. He stepped closer, and the candlelight carved his features into something intense and almost frightening. I am Kaelin Voss, Alpha King of the Northern Territories. My word is law from the Frostspine Mountains to the Silver Coast. And I am telling you, no one will touch you while you're under my protection." The air between them crackled with something unspoken. Illyra's pulse quickened, and she wasn't sure if it was fear or something far more dangerous. "What are you offering?" she asked quietly. "In exchange." "Your freedom. I'll buy your contract from Osric tonight. Every copper paid. And when this is over, 10 days, no more, I'll give you enough gold to disappear. New name, new territory, new life. Whatever you want. And if I refuse, then I walk away, and you never see me again." His gray eyes held hers, unwavering. "I didn't come to force you, Illyra. I didn't come to threaten or command. I came to ask. That's all I'm doing." She thought about Tavrin, a prince she'd never met, bleeding in some dark cell while his brothers scoured the world for him. She thought about her mother, who had burned for the crime of saving children. She thought about the cottage that wasn't really hers, the contract that owned her, the life she'd built from fear and silence. 10 days. Freedom. A chance to use her gift for something that mattered. If I do this," she said slowly, "I want a blood oath. Your word isn't enough." For the first time, something like respect flickered across his face. "Then you'll have it." Before we continue, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe. Your support helps more people discover these stories. Kaelin drew a blade from his belt without hesitation. It was a beautiful weapon, the hilt wrapped in black leather, the steel etched with symbols Illyra didn't recognize. Old magic, older than the kingdoms themselves. He drew the edge across his palm in one clean motion, and blood welled up, dark and gleaming. He offered his hand, palm up, waiting. Illyra's fingers trembled as she took the knife. The weight of it felt heavier than it should, as if the blade understood what they were about to do. She pressed the edge to her own palm, drew a breath, and cut. The pain was sharp, bright, clarifying. Blood bloomed against her skin like a crimson flower. She pressed her palm to his. The moment their blood touched, something shifted. It was like a door opening inside her chest, a rush of sensation that had nothing to do with the wound. Heat flooded through her, followed by a shock of recognition so profound it stole her breath. She felt him, not his thoughts, but his essence. The weight of his grief, the iron cage of his control, the desperate, clawing hope he was trying so hard to hide. And beneath all of it, something else. Something that reached for her like a hand in darkness, seeking, wanting, knowing. Illyra gasped and tried to pull away, but his fingers tightened around hers. "Did you feel that?" His voice was rough, barely above a whisper. She couldn't speak, could only stare at him, her chest tight with something she didn't dare identify. Magic flared between their joined hands, sealing the oath in fire and blood. The cut on her palm burned, then cooled, leaving behind a thin silver scar that matched his. Kaelin released her slowly, his expression unreadable. But she saw the way his hand shook as he wrapped a strip of cloth around his palm. She saw the way he refused to meet her eyes. He'd felt it too, whatever it was. Neither of them spoke of it. He handed her a second strip of cloth, and their fingers brushed, just barely, and that same electric recognition sparked again, smaller but no less devastating. Illyra wrapped her hand quickly, putting distance between them. "Tomorrow," Kaelin said, his voice carefully controlled. "I'll send someone at first light. Be ready." He was gone before she could respond, disappearing into the darkness like he'd never been there at all. Illyra stood alone in her cottage, staring at the silver scar on her palm, and wondered what she'd just bound herself to. The riders arrived with the dawn. There were 3 of them, dressed in dark leathers marked with the king's crest. A silver wolf mid-howl against a black moon. The leader was a woman with copper hair and a scar bisecting her left eyebrow. She introduced herself as Soraya, captain of the king's shadow guard. "His Majesty sent us to escort you." Her tone was clipped, but not unkind. "We ride hard. Can you keep pace?" Elira had never ridden anything faster than Elder Osric's plow horse, but she lifted her chin and said, "I'll manage." The journey took half a day. They rode north, past the familiar fields of Thornwick, through valleys Elira had only heard of in stories, and into the Frostspine Mountains where the air grew thin and cold. The landscape shifted from farmland to forest, to sheer cliffs of black stone that seemed to swallow the sky. Then the trees parted, and Elira saw Valheim. The fortress rose from the mountain itself, carved into the living rock like it had always been there. Towers of dark granite clawed at the clouds, banners bearing the silver wolf snapped in the wind. And beyond the walls, she could see movement. Warriors training, servants hurrying, the pulse of a kingdom's heart. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. They crossed a bridge suspended over a chasm so deep the bottom vanished into mist. Inside the courtyard, life buzzed with controlled chaos. But Elira noticed something else beneath the activity, a tension in the guard's shoulders, a tightness around the servant's eyes. Fear lived here, hidden but present. Soraya led her through corridors lined with tapestries depicting hunts and battles. Finally, she stopped before a heavy oak door. "Your chambers. His Majesty will send for you when he's ready." She paused, studying Elira with sharp green eyes. "A word of advice, healer. The king has enemies everywhere, including within these walls. Trust no one. Speak to no one about why you're here." Before Elira could respond, Soraya was gone. Elira pushed open the door to find a room larger than her entire cottage. A fire crackled in the hearth. A bed piled with furs dominated one corner, and through the window, the Frostspine Mountains stretched endlessly, savage and beautiful. She should have felt grateful. Instead, she felt the walls closing in. Trust no one. What had she walked into? The summons came at dusk. A young servant girl led Elira through a labyrinth of corridors to a chamber deep within the fortress. The room was sparse, stone walls, a single table draped in black velvet, and Kalen standing by the window with his back to her. He turned when she entered, and she noticed the shadows beneath his eyes had deepened. Had he slept at all? "Thank you for coming." "We have a blood oath," Elira said. "I didn't have much choice." A shadow passed through his expression. Guilt, maybe, or regret. But it vanished before she could name it. He gestured to the table. 7 items lay arranged on the velvet. The vial of blood she'd seen before. A torn piece of fabric, dark blue with gold thread. A signet ring bearing a wolfen crown. A strip of leather that might have been a belt or strap. A single boot, well worn. A dagger with a broken tip. And a letter, folded and sealed with unmarked wax. "These are everything I have," Kalen said quietly. "Some belong to Tavrin. Others were left behind by whoever took him. I need you to read them. Tell me what you see." Elira approached the table slowly. Even from a distance, she could feel the objects calling to her, that dark gift stirring at the base of her spine. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. "Blood remembers, Elira. Blood always remembers. And those who master it can do more than see. They can command." She'd never understood what her mother meant by that last part. She'd been too young, too frightened, too focused on survival to ask. "It won't be pleasant," she warned. "What I see. Sometimes it's just fragments, images, emotions. But sometimes I live through the memories. I feel what they felt." "I understand." "No, you don't." She met his eyes. "It will drain me, leave me shaking, maybe sick. And there's no guarantee I'll find what you're looking for." "I'm not asking for guarantees." Kalen moved closer, his presence a wall of warmth at her side. "I'm asking you to try, and I'll be here. Whatever you need." Elira reached for the vial first. The moment her fingers closed around the glass, the world dissolved. Darkness. Stone walls pressing close. The smell of damp and rust and something rotten. "He's cold," so cold, and his wrists burn where the iron cuffs have rubbed them raw. Footsteps in the corridor outside. A voice, cultured and calm. The king grows desperate. He's hired another tracker, some hedge witch from the eastern valleys. Another voice, rougher. Should we move him? Not yet. Lord Vendrick wants him here, wants the king to exhaust himself searching in all the wrong places. And if the king finds us? A soft laugh. He won't. Not until we're ready. Not until the prince has told us everything. Pain. Blinding, searing pain. And through it, a single thought, relentless and desperate. Kaelin, don't come. It's a trap. Elira dropped the vial with a gasp. She was on her knees without knowing how she'd gotten there. Kaelin's hands gripped her shoulders, steadying her, and his voice cut through the ringing in her ears. Elira, can you hear me? Lord Vendrick. The name tore from her throat. He's the one. He has Tavrin. Kaelin went rigid. That's impossible. Vendrick has been on my council for 15 years. He was my father's closest friend. He's also the one torturing your brother. Elira's voice shook. They mentioned a tracker. Someone from the eastern valleys. They knew about your searches, Kaelin. They're watching your every move. She saw the moment the truth landed. Saw the way his expression shuddered, ice forming over grief. Where? His voice was barely human. Where are they keeping him? Underground. Stone walls, no windows. It smelled like damp and decay. She pressed a hand to her forehead, trying to hold the fragments together. They said Vendrick wants you to exhaust yourself. Wants you searching in the wrong places, which means Tavrin isn't far. Kaelin finished. He's close. Somewhere I'd never think to look. Kaelin. Elira grabbed his wrist, and that electric spark flared between them again. Tavrin knows it's a trap. He was trying to warn you. He doesn't want you to come. Then he's going to be disappointed. The Alpha King's eyes had turned to steel. Vendrick has served my family for decades, ate at my table, swore oaths to protect my bloodline. His voice dropped to something lethal. And all this time, he's been bleeding my brother in some dungeon. He pulled away from her, pacing to the window, his shoulders rigid with barely contained fury. There are more items, Elira said quietly, more memories to read. I might be able to find the exact location. Not tonight. He didn't turn around. You're pale as death. You need rest. Your brother doesn't have time for me to rest. And you're no good to him if you collapse. Now he turned, and beneath the steel she saw something softer, concern, unguarded and genuine. Please, eat something. Sleep. We'll continue tomorrow. The word please again, like a key turning a lock she hadn't known existed. Fine, she breathed. Tomorrow. But as she left the chamber, one thought haunted her. Trust no one. And Lord Vendrick had been in this castle for 15 years. The next 3 days blurred together in a rhythm of visions and recovery. Each morning, Elira read another object. The torn fabric revealed a carriage ride through dense forest, voices arguing about routes and timing. The signet ring showed Tavrin's capture, the betrayal in his eyes when he recognized faces he'd trusted. The leather strap held memories of restraints, of darkness, of a prince refusing to break despite everything they did to him. And through it all, Kaelin was there. He caught her when the visions knocked her sideways, brought her water without being asked, gave her space to recover without hovering, yet somehow always remained within reach. He never pushed, never demanded more than she could give. It was disorienting. Elira had spent her entire life around men who took what they wanted, Elder Osric with his contracts and wandering eyes, village boys who thought a healer owed those favors, traders who saw a woman alone as an opportunity. Kaelin asked, every time, "Can you continue? Do you need rest? Is this too much?" She didn't know what to do with a man who treated her like she mattered beyond her usefulness. On the third evening, she found him on the eastern battlements, staring out at the mountains with the weight of kingdoms on his shoulders. The wind whipped his dark hair across his face, and he looked younger somehow, lost, You should be sleeping, Alira said, joining him at the wall. So should you? I tried. The visions follow me into dreams sometimes. She wrapped her arms around herself against the cold. Your brother is strong, Kaelin. What I've seen, most men would have broken by now. He's holding on. He's always been the stronger one. Kaelin's voice was rough. Everyone thinks the Alpha King is invincible. They don't know that Tavrin was the one who held me together after our parents died. He was 14 years old, and he sat with me through every nightmare, every moment I wanted to abdicate and disappear. His hands tightened on the stone. I can't lose him. You won't. You can't promise that. No, Alira admitted. But I've seen his memories. He's fighting to survive because he believes you're coming. That faith is keeping him alive. Kaelin turned to look at her, and the vulnerability in his expression stole her breath. What if I'm not enough? What if I find him and I'm too late, or I fail, or... Stop. She stepped closer without thinking, close enough to feel the heat radiating from him despite the mountain cold. You've spent 3 days watching me suffer through visions that would destroy most people. You've been patient and kind when you could have demanded and commanded. You're not the monster the stories describe. Maybe I am. His voice dropped. Maybe I'm just better at hiding it around you. Why would you hide anything from me? I'm nobody. A contract healer from a village that doesn't even appear on most maps. You're not nobody. The words carried sudden intensity, almost like frustration. You're the bravest person I've ever met. You watched your mother burn and still chose to use your gift to help people. You've spent years surviving alone, and you haven't let it make you cruel or bitter. You stood in your doorway facing the Alpha King and demanded a blood oath because you knew your worth. Alira's breath stuttered. Kaelin, I know you're going to leave. He cut her off, his gray eyes blazing with something she didn't dare name. When this is over, you'll take the gold and disappear, and I'll never see you again. That's what we agreed. That's what I promised. His voice cracked, just barely. But I need you to know that these past days, watching you, talking to you, seeing who you really are, it's been the first time in 2 years I've felt anything other than grief and rage. The wind howled around them, but Alira couldn't feel it anymore. All she could feel was him, his presence, his pain, the pull between them that had started with the blood oath and grown stronger every day. The bond, she whispered. When we made the oath, I felt something. So did I. What does it mean? Kaelin was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was unsteady. It means you're my mate. Or you could be, if we both chose it. But I won't trap you with that, Alira. I won't use it to keep you here. And if I chose to leave? After we find Tavrin? The pain that flickered across his face nearly undid her. Then I let you go. And I spend the rest of my life knowing I found my mate and lost her in the same breath. She should step back, protect herself. She'd spent 7 years building walls, learning that hope was a luxury she couldn't afford. But the way he looked at her, like she was something precious, something worth protecting, made those walls feel like paper. Ask me again, she said softly. After Tavrin is safe, after the 10 days are done. Ask me to stay, and I'll give you an honest answer. Hope flared in his eyes, bright and desperate. That's not a no. It's not a yes either. I'll take it. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his fingers brushed her cheek. Featherlight, reverent. Whatever you decide, Alira, I need you to know. You've already saved me. Just by being here. Just by being you. Before she could respond, she rose on her toes and pressed her lips to his. Kaelin froze for a heartbeat. Then his arms came around her, pulling her close, and he kissed her back with a tenderness that undid something inside her chest. His hands trembled where they pressed against her back, and she realized the Alpha King, the monster of legend, was shaking because of her. When they finally broke apart, foreheads pressed together, breath mingling in the cold air, Alira whispered, I'm terrified. So am I. His thumb traced her jaw. But I'd rather be terrified with you than safe without you. On the 5th day, everything changed. Elira was reading the final object, the letter with the unmarked seal, when the vision hit her like a fist to the chest. A study. Rich wood paneling, heavy curtains, the smell of pipe smoke, and old books. Lord Vendrick sits behind a massive desk, gray-bearded and distinguished, the picture of noble respectability. A woman stands before him, copper hair, green eyes, a scar bisecting her left eyebrow. Soraya. The Bloodsinger is more skilled than we anticipated, Soraya says. She's already identified you. The king knows. Vendrick doesn't seem concerned. Then we accelerate the timeline, kill the witch, make it look like an accident. Poison, perhaps, or a fall from the battlements. The king will be devastated. Grief makes men stupid. And the prince? Keep him alive for now. Once Kaelin is dead, we'll produce Tavrin as the tragic survivor. A puppet king is far more useful than a dead one. Soraya nods. The witch trusts me. I escorted her here myself. I can get close enough. Do it tonight. Before she reads anything else. Elira surfaced from the vision with a scream locked in her throat. Kaelin was already there, catching her as she swayed, his hand steady on her shoulders. What did you see? Soraya. The name came out strangled. She's working with Vendrick. She's been reporting everything to him. And tonight? Elira's voice broke. She's supposed to kill me tonight. Kaelin went absolutely still. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Soraya has been with me for 6 years, he said slowly. She saved my life during the border wars. She's captain of my personal guard. And she's going to poison me or throw me from the battlements before dawn. Elira gripped his arms. Kaelin, they're not just after Tavrin. They want you dead. Vendrick is planning a coup. He wants to use Tavrin as a puppet king. The pieces clicked together behind his eyes. She could see it happening. Years of trust crumbling into dust. How many? His voice was terrifyingly calm. How many of my people belong to him? I don't know. I only saw Soraya. Then we assume the worst. We trust no one. He pulled her closer, one hand cradling the back of her head as if he could protect her through sheer will. You're not leaving my sight. Not for a second. I could run. The words tasted like ash. Take the gold, disappear tonight. If I'm gone, they have no reason to... No. The word was absolute. You're not running. Not because I forbid it, but because they'll hunt you down the moment you leave these walls. Vendrick can't afford to let a Bloodsinger live. Not one who knows his secrets. He was right. She knew he was right. But the fear was choking her. Memories of her mother's screams echoing through the years. I won't let them touch you. Kaelin tilted her chin up, forcing her to meet his eyes. I will burn this kingdom to the ground before I let anyone hurt you. Do you understand me? The ferocity in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, it made her feel something she hadn't felt in 7 years. Safe. So what do we do? She asked. We set a trap. His jaw tightened. Soraya thinks she's hunting you. We let her believe she's succeeding. And when she makes her move, we catch her. Get her to reveal Vendrick's location. Exactly. He pressed his forehead to hers. But Elira, you need to understand what I'm asking. I'm asking you to be bait. To put yourself in danger so we can end this. And I hate myself for it. It's my choice. She echoed his words from that first night. You gave me a choice. I'm choosing to fight. Something broke open in his expression. He kissed her, hard, desperate, like he was memorizing the taste of her. If anything happens to you, he breathed against her lips, I will never forgive myself. Then make sure nothing happens. They set the trap that night. Elira returned to her chambers alone, or so it appeared. Kaelin and 3 warriors he trusted absolutely were hidden in the adjoining room, waiting in silence. She sat by the fire, forcing herself to breathe normally. The knife Kaelin had pressed into her hand was cold against her thigh, hidden beneath the folds of her skirt. "Just in case," he'd said. "I'll be there before you need it. But just in case." The midnight bell tolled. Footsteps in the corridor. Soft, deliberate, trained. The door opened without a knock. Soraya stepped inside, closing the door behind her with a soft click. In her hand she held a cup, steam rising from whatever liquid it contained. "I thought you might need something to help you sleep," Soraya said, her voice warm, concerned. "The perfect lie. The visions take a toll. This will ease the dreams." Alira's pulse raced. "That's kind of you." "We look after our own here." Soraya crossed the room, extending the cup. "Drink. You'll feel better." Alira took the cup, raised it toward her lips, and then she threw the contents into Soraya's face. The woman snarled, actually snarled, and lunged. But Kaelin was already there, bursting through the adjoining door, his warriors flanking him. They seized Soraya before she could reach Alira, forcing her to her knees. "Wolf's bane," Kaelin said, his voice ice. "Enough to stop a heart in minutes. That's what you brought for her?" Soraya laughed, blood and betrayal in her eyes. "You think this changes anything? Vendrick has been planning this for years. You're already dead. You just don't know it yet." "Where is my brother?" "Closer than you think." Her smile was vicious. "Close enough that you've walked past him 100 times without knowing." Alira stepped forward. "The dungeons. The old dungeons beneath the East Tower. The ones that were sealed after the plague." Soraya's smile faltered. "I'm a bloodsinger," Alira said quietly. "Your memories are open to me the moment you speak. You just told me everything." The color drained from Soraya's face. Kaelin turned to his men. "Lock her in the cells. Triple guard, no visitors." He looked at Alira. "Can you find him? Right now, tonight?" "Yes." "Then we go." His hand found hers, gripping tight. "We end this tonight." They moved through the castle like ghosts. A small force of 6, Kaelin, Alira, and 4 warriors, whose loyalty had been proven in blood. The entrance to the old dungeons was hidden behind a collapsed wall in the East Tower, sealed with rubble that had recently been disturbed. Someone had been coming and going for months. Kaelin shifted the stones with inhuman strength, revealing a passage that descended into darkness. "Stay behind me," he said. "Not a chance." Despite everything, he almost smiled. Together they descended into the black. The dungeons smelled of rot and old blood. Torchlight flickered against walls that wept moisture, casting shadows that seemed to move on their own. Alira followed the pull of Tuvrin's blood, that dark gift guiding her through passages that twisted and branched like veins beneath the castle. Left. Down. Through the iron gate. "Here," she whispered. "He's here." They emerged into a chamber lit by guttering candles. And there, chained to the far wall, was Prince Tuvrin. He was thin, far too thin, his dark hair matted, his face hollow. But his eyes, the same pale gray as his brother's, were alert, alive. "Kaelin." The word was barely a rasp. "You shouldn't have come, it's a trap." "I know." Kaelin moved toward his brother, but Alira grabbed his arm. "Wait." Lord Vendrick stepped from the shadows, flanked by a dozen armed men. He was exactly as Alira had seen in the vision, gray-bearded, distinguished, wearing the face of a trusted advisor like a mask. But his eyes were cold, calculating. "Your Majesty." Vendrick's voice dripped false respect. "I wondered how long it would take. The Bloodsinger was more efficient than I anticipated. I should have killed her the moment she arrived." "You should have done many things." Kaelin's voice was lethal calm. "Explain yourself. Now." "Explain?" Vendrick laughed. "I served your father for 15 years, watched him squander opportunities, make weak alliances, show mercy to enemies who deserved execution, and then he died and left the kingdom to a boy. A boy who has held this kingdom together for 8 years. Held it together?" Vendrick's mask cracked, revealing contempt beneath. You've coddled the weak, negotiated with rivals who should have been crushed, wasted resources searching for a brother who should have been written off as dead. The Northern Territories need strength, not sentiment. So you took Tavrin, tortured him, planned to murder me and rule through a puppet. I plan to save this kingdom from your soft heart. Vendrick drew his sword. Kill them all. Leave the prince alive. We still need him. His men advanced. Kaelin moved like lightning, meeting the first attacker with brutal efficiency. His warriors engaged, steel clashing against steel, but they were outnumbered 2-1. Illyra pressed her back against the wall, the knife Kaelin had given her clutched in her hand. She wasn't a fighter, had never been a fighter, but she refused to be helpless. A soldier broke through, lunging toward her with murder in his eyes. She ducked under his swing, years of dodging handsy drunks finally proving useful, and drove her knife into his thigh. He screamed, crumpling, and she scrambled away. Illyra! Tavrin's voice cut through the chaos. The chains! The lock is rusted. If you can reach me... She ran. Vendrick's men were focused on Kaelin, on the warriors carving through their ranks. No one noticed the healer slipping along the wall toward the chained prince. Hold still. Her hands shook as she examined the lock. Old iron, corroded with age and moisture. She didn't have a key, but she had something better. She pressed her palm to the lock and pushed. Her gift wasn't meant for this, wasn't meant for anything but reading blood memories. But blood was iron, and iron was in everything, and her mother had once whispered that the old blood singers could do more than see. Break, she commanded. Break for me. The lock shattered. Tavrin caught himself as the chains fell away, weak but free. You're either very skilled or very desperate. Both. She helped him stand. Can you fight? Give me a sword and watch. She grabbed a fallen blade and pressed it into his hands. Tavrin's grip was shaky, but his eyes burned with determination. Together, they turned back to the battle. Kaelin was magnificent and terrifying. He fought like the wolf on his banner, all controlled savagery and lethal precision. But Vendrick's men kept coming, and even the Alpha King had limits. Then Vendrick himself stepped forward, blade raised, aiming for Kaelin's exposed back. Brother! Tavrin's voice rang out. Kaelin spun, but too late. Illyra moved without thinking. She threw herself between them, her gift exploding outward in a wave of pure instinct. Blood called to blood. Every enemy in the room had it pumping through their veins, and for one impossible moment she commanded it. Stop. Vendrick's men froze, literally froze, their bodies locked in place as Illyra's power held their blood motionless in their veins. The effort was agony. She could feel herself burning from the inside, her gift pushed far beyond anything she'd ever attempted. Kaelin didn't hesitate. He drove his sword through Vendrick's chest in one clean thrust. That's for my brother, he said coldly, and for threatening my mate. Vendrick crumpled, dead before he hit the ground. The moment he fell, Illyra's power gave out. She collapsed, darkness rushing in from the edges of her vision. The last thing she felt was Kaelin's arms catching her. The last thing she heard was his voice, desperate and afraid. Illyra, stay with me. Please stay with me. She woke in Kaelin's bed. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, warming her face. Her body ached like she'd been trampled by horses, but she was alive. That seemed significant. You're awake. She turned her head to find Kaelin beside her, sitting in a chair that had clearly been pulled close to the bed. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Dark circles under his eyes, stubble shadowing his jaw, clothes rumpled. How long? Her voice came out as a croak. 3 days. He took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. You nearly died, Illyra. Whatever you did in that dungeon, you burned through something. The healers weren't sure you'd wake up. Tavrin? Recovering. Weak, but alive. Asking about the terrifying witch who broke his chains and stopped an army with her mind. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. He likes you. And Vendrick's people? Arrested, executed, exiled. The conspiracy went deeper than we thought, but we've rooted out the worst of it. His grip on her hand tightened. It's over. You saved us. Elira closed her eyes. 3 days. The 10 days were nearly over. The oath is fulfilled, she said quietly. I'm free to go. Silence. When she opened her eyes, Kaylin's expression was carefully blank, but she could see the pain beneath, the bracing for impact. Yes, he said. The gold is ready. Enough to start over anywhere in the world. I'll provide an escort to whatever destination you choose. No one will follow you. No one will threaten you. He paused and his voice roughened. You've more than earned your freedom. And if I don't want to go? Hope flickered in his gray eyes, desperate, fragile, and afraid to believe. Then I would beg you to stay. His voice faltered on the words. Not as an obligation, not because of the bond, but because these past 10 days have been the first time I've felt whole in years, because you make me want to be better than I am. Because... He stopped, swallowing hard. Because I love you, Elira. And I will spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of you, if you'll let me. Elira thought about the life waiting for her. Gold, freedom, anonymity. Everything she'd dreamed of for 7 years. And she thought about the man beside her. The king who asked, instead of commanded. Who held her when the visions broke her. Who looked at her like she hung the stars. I love you too, she said. Kaylin's breath caught. I'm still terrified, she continued. I don't know how to be a queen. I don't know if I'll ever fit in your world, but I know that when I imagine the future, you're in it. Every version, every path. Is that a yes? It's a yes. She smiled through the tears streaming down her face. Ask me to stay, Kaylin. Stay. He brought her hand to his lips. Stay with me. Marry me. Let me love you for the rest of our lives. Yes. To all of it. He kissed her then, gentle because she was still healing, but bright with joy and relief and love. When he pulled back, they were both crying. My advisors are going to be furious, he murmured against her lips. The Alpha King marrying a village healer. I'm not just a village healer, I'm a terrifying witch, remember? His laugh rumbled through both of them. That you are. The bonding ceremony took place under the full moon in the great hall of Valheim, with the entire kingdom watching. Elira wore deep green silk, a color Kaylin had chosen because it matched her eyes when she laughed. The crown on her head felt foreign, too heavy, but his hand in hers made it bearable. Tavrin stood beside his brother, still thin from his ordeal, but standing tall. He'd insisted on being there, had threatened to drag himself from the healer's wing if they tried to stop him. I owe you everything, he'd told Elira that morning. My life, my brother's happiness. Name your price, and it's yours. Just get healthy, she'd said, and don't let anyone kidnap you again. I'm not sure I can survive another rescue. He'd laughed, a real laugh, bright and surprised, and she'd known they would be friends. Now, standing before the gathered court, Elira spoke vows she'd written herself. I choose you, she said, her voice carrying through the hall. Not because of fate or magic or bonds, but because you saw me, the real me, and decided I was worth fighting for. I choose you today, tomorrow, and every day after. Kaylin's eyes glistened. I choose you, he answered. Not because I needed your gift or your power, but because you're brave and true and kind, and you make me want to be the king my people deserve. I choose you with everything I am. The crowd erupted when they kissed. Elira barely heard them. Later, much later, they stood on the eastern battlements, their place now, where everything had shifted between them. Tell me something, Kaylin murmured, his arms wrapped around her from behind. Something I don't know. Elira leaned back against his chest. The night you came to my door, I almost didn't open it. I heard your boots stop and I thought, this is how it ends. The monster finally found me. And now? Now I know the truth. She turned in his arms to face him. The monster knocked, asked permission, and then gave me everything I never knew I wanted. Some monster I am. The worst. She kissed him softly. I'm very disappointed. His laughter echoed off the mountains, and Alira felt something settle in her chest. Peace, belonging, home. She thought about the woman she'd been, hiding in a village that didn't want her, bound to a contract she couldn't escape. So afraid of her own gift, she'd nearly let it die. That woman was gone now. In her place stood a queen, a mate, a blood singer who had faced death and chosen love. Not bad for a girl who just wanted to survive the night. Kaylin? Thank you for stopping outside my door. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. Thank you for opening it. They stayed there until dawn painted the mountains gold, wrapped in each other and the future stretching bright before them. Where are you listening from? Let me know in the comments. I love hearing from you. And if you enjoyed this story, please subscribe. It's free, and it helps more people discover these tales.